Hi everyone, I'm Ellie. I'm the coordinator of Training, Enrichment and Welfare here at Jerusalem Zoo.
And I'm Benjamin. I'm in charge of the Carnivore and Orangutan department here in the zoo.
And we're here as part of the ABMA's Behaviour Month and Super Resource Saturday. So we're here today to talk to you a little bit about record keeping, because we all know that record keeping is not only a part of a zookeeper's job, but it's also a part of having a good training and enrichment program. Now we all understand that it is difficult to find a good process that we can use for record keeping, one that's not only easy for keepers to use, but also that provides valuable data at the end and a way to analyse and use that data to improve our training and enrichment programs. So the keepers here at Jerusalem Zoo from the Carnivore and Orangutan department have developed a great system of not only keeping records, but also analysing it for future use. So I'm going to hand over to you, Benjamin.
So we were looking for an easy and efficient way in order to document all our training and enrichment and then to analyze all the answers that we document. So what we did is we started using a Google Form platform, which is free, and we can have it all on our phones and all on the keepers' phones. And then after every enrichment or every training session, we can just take out our cell phones and document what we did. And then throughout the video, you'll see how we take that documentation and analyze it in order to benefit the welfare of our animals and to improve our training and enrichment performance. So now we're going to go through the whole process that we do for training. We're going to start with a short video of Keeper Yahel and Ito the orangutan doing parts of their training session. And then afterwards, we'll go through the documentation, analysis and evaluation of the training, and hope you enjoy. So Yahel and Ito just finished their wonderful training session, and now we're moving to the part that we have to document our training. So we built a training form in Google Forms, and now we're going to go through how we document our training. So Yahel is now going to choose the date and the time that the training just took place. And then we move to choose the name of the keeper. We have all the keepers' names here, and she chooses her own name and which species she worked with. So she's choosing the orangutan, and then automatically it will be moved to the form which works with the orangutan, because each form is different, because each animal does different behaviors, each species do different behaviors. So the first thing she has to choose is what's the name of the animal that participated. So she chooses Ito. And now she chooses all the keepers who were present at the same time when she was doing the training. And we purposely document that so that we can see that if any other keepers who were present during the training, if they affect the actual training that we're doing. Even that they're not doing the training, could be that the keeper who's present is the one who's affecting the participation of the animal. And then here we have a list of all the behaviors that our orangutans are trained to do. And now this list changes from species to species, because of course not all our species do the same behaviors. And each behavior we have to give them a score between 1 to 5. When on top we have the description of what is 1, what is 2, what is 3, what is 4, what is 5. The average of course is 3. And then we aim that most of our animals will do at least 3 in all our behaviors. When 4 is over the average and 5 is exceptional the way he participated. So now Yahel is going to fill in, according to the behaviors, what does she think the score is for each behavior. What is good about using this kind of documentation is that it's on all our cell phones, and we can just do it straight after the training without needing to remember what we did. It's easy, it's convenient, and it takes less than a minute to fill the form. And that way we have the optimal documentation of the training session that we just did. And then our next thing we have to choose is what was the reinforcement. So if it's food, if it's juice, if it's enrichment, if it's access to the yard, then we choose what was the reinforcement. Then we choose the location that the training took place in. And then we choose the motivation. The motivation, we have a scale from 1 to 10, and we choose what the motivation was of the animal to participate. And then afterwards, we have all kinds of sentences with descriptions of stuff that may affect the training, if it's weather, if it's aggression, if the animal is on heat or mating, if he's aggressive towards other animals or towards other keepers. We wrote down all kinds of comments that usually we have when we do the training. And of course, we've also got the option to write a comment which isn't from the list. And then what we do is we press submit, and it gets sent to our computer and kept as a Google form. Okay, so throughout the day, all our keepers in the section fill out the Google form template that we have for each training session. And then we end up with having a big table and Google Sheets with all the training sessions of all the section. And then what we did after we have this template is we sat with our section and our training coordinator and try to think of how can we use all this information in order to improve our training sessions and improve the response of our animals to the behaviors that we asked them to do throughout the training session. So what we did is we generated automatic formulas. So what we can do with the first formula is choose the specific species that we're working, and then what is the date range that we want to work with. So for this example, we chose the date range from the beginning of the year up till now. And then we get the number of training sessions. The more training sessions we have, the more accurate the results are, because then it disqualifies all kinds of different things that disturbed each training session that sometimes happens to all of us. And then afterwards, we move to specific charts that we generated with the formulas, and we'll go over all the charts now. The first 4 charts are charts that go over the scoring that we give for the behavior of the animal. They get a grade between 1 to 5 on their behavior, and if they met the criteria and did what we asked them to do according to our training plans. So what we do here is we can check in the first chart the influence of each keeper on the animal and the scoring of the behavior. So for example, one can see that with me, with the Soga, our specific orangutan, because we can choose here the different orangutans. So when I work with Soga and I do call over, then for some reason her scoring is under average, and every scoring which is under average, we purposely have it marked automatically in red, because then we know that there's a problem that we have to address. So we can go over all the behaviors and see the different scorings that each keeper gets, and that's our first chart. Our second chart checks the influence of other people present throughout the training. So we choose who is the keeper who is doing the training, and then we can choose different people or different keepers who are present and to see if it affects the training. And then if we go back to the other chart, then we can see, for example, with the call over with Soga, that when I'm alone, then for some reason her score is under average. But when somebody's present, no matter who, then the score is exactly the average that we'd like. But then for some reason, with specific keepers who are present, then the score again is under average. And then we know that we have an issue there that we have to address and see why or what is the problem and how can we solve that specific problem. So just to make it sound clear, when we say that a score is low, it means that the animal is not responding or is responding under the criteria that we actually expect the animal to do throughout the training session. So then we know that we have an issue that we have to take care in order for the animal to stand in the criteria that we actually wanted. Our third chart, we check the influence of the location or of the reinforcement on the grade that we give the animal for the behavior. We can check the influence of the scoring according to the location. So with Kesatu, we can see that in the training window, his scoring is over average. That means that he meets the criteria over average and his participation is relatively high. But for some reason in location number 1 in the house, then his criteria is under average. And then we can see here that we have some kind of issue that, again, we need to deal with. This chart, we can also change it to reinforcement and check the same thing with reinforcement. So then I can choose all the different reinforcement that we give the orangutans, and I can check the influence of that specific reinforcement on the behavior of the specific animal. So this is our fourth chart. Our fourth chart is a simple count that counts how many times each keeper did each behavior with each specific animal. It's important because also we can see if any of the keepers need to work on their relationship with a specific animal. For example, we can see here that one of our keepers throughout the last 10 months did not do any injection training with Soga, and then we know that that's an issue that we have to address. In addition, if we have a keeper that doesn't have a lot of training sessions, then we know that his results have a bigger effect on the general percentage of the scoring. So that's why having this chart helps us see how does the scoring affect according to the amount of training sessions that we did for each animal. And then this chart generates automatically this easier to see visual chart that we can see the amount of behaviors that we did for each animal. So for example, I did 19% of my training sessions, I did mouth with Soga, but I only did 1.9% injection training with Soga. And then I can decide, is that okay? Is that not okay? And then what do I have to put a bigger emphasis on when I do my next training sessions? And that concludes all the behavior scoring. Our next line of charts are charts that check the motivation of the animal. Did the animal want to come and participate? How did he react to all the training sessions? So I have here 3 charts which are basically the same, and then I can just change the different variables and see the effect on the motivation. Now, the motivation score is between 1 to 10, and hopefully all our animals will be as close as we can to 10. So here, for example, I have the time of day, and I can check each specific animal, how is the motivation changed by the time of day. And we can see that basically with orangutans, they don't have a big issue with the time of day, that their motivation average is relatively the same. But then when I do the same check on location, then for example, I can see with Soga that she participates fine in every location. Her motivation to participate is very high, but training window she does not like. And then her motivation to come and participate in the training window is very, very low. Just as a note, the training window is a window that we can open which has access near to where the public comes, and then we can do training sessions that visitors can see throughout the day. And then for some reason we can see that she has no her motivation to come and participate in that window is relatively low and under average. In our third chart, I check the average of motivation compared to each keeper that comes and does the training session. And again, we can see with the orangutans that they don't really have a big preference in motivation, depends who the keeper is. I can also use these charts to check the different days of the week, and that is good for animals that don't eat every day. And then I can check if their motivation changes according to the fact if they're hungry or they're not hungry, are they full? And I can check throughout the days of the week, how does it affect their motivation? I can also check throughout the time of the year, and then I can see with species that have different behaviors throughout the year, and I can see how does that affect their motivation to participate in the training session. Our last chart is our problem-solving chart. We can choose all kinds of different variables and see how they affect the motivation. So then we can use this chart to find the best setting so that the animal will have the best motivation to participate in the training session. Or if we have a certain problem, then we can try and point out exactly what is the specific variable that's affecting the animal's motivation in participation in the training session. So for example, here, I choose who is the keeper who's participating, and I chose myself and Yahel. I chose the same location for all of us, the same reinforcement for all of us, and then each time I chose a different keeper who is present, and then I can see actually, is there a difference in the keeper who's present, and is there a difference with one of us who were the actual trainers of the animals? And then I get the motivation score, and I can see that basically it's the same, but there is a bit of a difference every time there is somebody who's present who is not a keeper. When somebody is present who is not a keeper, it's a special visitor or someone for the medical staff or somebody from the maintenance who by chance was in that location. And then I'm doing the training whilst there's somebody else who was present that their specific animal does not know. And I can see that there's a slight decrease in their motivation. So our last column here checks the percentage of all the different variables that we chose in the specific training session. So for example, 1% had these specific variables in the training session. Now it looks like it isn't a high number, but we've got so many different variables. So 1% isn't that high, but when we get to 6 or 9%, that means that quite a bit of the training sessions had these specific variables that we chose. And of course, if we change the variables, it will also change the percentage of each training session. So we have to keep it in the back of our mind that we've got so many different variables that sometimes it also will affect the motivation, the scoring of the motivation. So to conclude, all the use of these charts is we use all this information in order to improve our training sessions and to try and eliminate things that will affect the animal's behavior or motivation throughout the training session. And then once a month, we generate a form like this for every species and every animal, and we send it to all our section, and then all our keepers, and we can see it, and we can all learn together how can we improve our training. And we can also see on a month-to-month basis if what we're working on is improving the animal's behavior and motivation to participate in our training sessions.
So we hope you all enjoy these videos from the team here at Jerusalem Zoo about their record keeping for training and enrichment. And if you have any questions at all, put them in the comments on Facebook. We'll try and get to any questions that you may have. And if you have anything to share about your record keeping or anything else that will help other keepers out there, put them in the comments as well. And you can all be a part of the ABMA's Behaviour Month and Super Resource Saturday. Thank you.
For our second video, we're going to go through the whole process we do for enrichment. We're going to start by seeing a short video of an enrichment we do for the bears. It's an enrichment that encourages the bears to stand on their back legs, use their tongue and their nails in order to get items of food or smoothie, which is in between the pieces of log which are hanging from the side of the exhibit. What is very nice about this enrichment is the fact that we can lower it in and take it out throughout the day and play with the height of the enrichment. So we'll start with the video and then we'll go through all the documentation and analysis process. So we just finished doing our enrichment and observing the animal's reaction. So what we do is we take out our cell phones and open a link to Google Forms. And then we have here our Google form for enrichment. We fill in the date, the time, then we choose what category of enrichment are we choosing. So we used food and cognitive. We choose the species, which was bears at this time, and then we do next, and then we automatically get linked out to the page of the bears. Now, because our enrichment are goal-based, then each species obviously has a different set of behaviors that we want to encourage. So when we choose bears, we automatically get to the page which is related to the bears. We choose which bears participate, which is Aliza and Shachar that participated in our enrichment. And then we choose what are the behaviors that we wanted to encourage. So we wanted to encourage the bears to stand on their back legs. We wanted to encourage use of their tongue and use of their nails in order to separate the different pieces of logs which were hanging from outside. And then after we observe the enrichment, we actually choose what did the animal actually do? Did he do the behaviors that we wanted him to do, or he didn't do the behavior? So we mark down the behaviors that we wanted to encourage, and then we mark down the behaviors that the animal actually did. So in this situation with this enrichment, then they did stand on their back legs and they did use their tongue and their nails. So we're pleased with that. And then afterwards, what we mark down is what did we do. So we choose the yard, we choose use of food. It is a hanging enrichment, and we actually have here all kinds of different comments that we go over them and mark, and we actually build what the specific enrichment is. So, and we use the feeder of the logs. Then afterwards, we need to mark how long did the animal participate with the enrichment. So we don't actually have to fill in this section, but obviously we'd like to fill it in, because not every time we sit and watch the animal's reaction throughout all the time he's reacting to the enrichment, and not all the time we see the animal reacting to the enrichment. So what we do is we fill how long it took them to react to this enrichment. So today it took them an hour to get out all the food, and they continued participating with the enrichment for an hour. And then we mark down the success rate. And the success rate is, did the animal do all the behaviors we actually wanted him to do? And did he participate for the amount of time that we expected him to participate with the enrichment? And then it's a scale from 1 to 10. And because the animals interacted with their enrichment for an hour and they did all the behaviors that we wanted them to do, then we'll mark down a 10. And then here we have all kinds of comments that frequently happen when we do enrichment, like the animal did not want to participate with the enrichment, or we didn't observe the animal interacting with the enrichment, but we can see a few hours afterwards that the animal did interact, but we actually didn't see the animal interact. Or the animals started fighting over the enrichment, or the animals were frustrated from the enrichment, and all kinds of comments that we frequently have, because then afterwards we can monitor these comments and see how they affect the behaviors that we'd like to do. And when we finish that, we press submit. Okay, so just like our training form, when we fill in the Google form for our enrichment, we end up with a big spreadsheet on Google Sheets. And what we did is generate formulas in order to analyze all the information about our different species and about the enrichment that we're doing. So the first thing that we do is we choose the actual species, and then after we choose the species, we move to this form. And this page, I choose the actual date, the time frame that I want to check. So I choose the start date and the end date. On the first line, I get just basic information about the amount of enrichment we did and the different times of days. But the most important part is all these charts. So in the second line of charts, we have all the charts which relate to the behavior. We have here all the list of behaviors that we tried to encourage throughout the time frame that we chose. Then we have here all the amount of time that we planned to do each behavior. And then we have another column with all the amount of times that actually we viewed the animals doing the behavior that we tried to encourage. And then in the third column, we have how many times did we not stay to observe, because we also mark we did not stay and observe if it's an enrichment that we do on a regular basis. And then what we have is the success rate. The success rate is the amount of times that we viewed the animal doing the behavior that we planned. And then in addition, we have the last column, which is the percentage of how many times it was not observed. So when we move to this chart, then we can actually see the success rate. So we can see that every time we viewed, for example, foraging, then 95% there was a success rate in encouraging the behavior of foraging. But in addition, 24% out of the total amount of times we tried to encourage foraging, we did not stay and observe. So that way we can know how many times are we managing to encourage the behavior, how many times is the animal actually doing the behavior. And then in the last chart, we can see how many times did we encourage each behavior, and then we can actually know if we're encouraging all the behaviors we actually want to encourage, or we're not encouraging all the behaviors that we want to encourage, and then what other behaviors do we need to start encouraging in order to improve the amount of behaviors that we're encouraging our animals to do. In addition, we've got 2 more charts underneath that we can see what time of day do we do most enrichment. So if it's an animal which is active throughout the day, then I'd want to do lots of enrichment throughout the day. If it's a species which is active throughout the night, then my goal is to do more enrichments in the evening or early in the morning, and not on times when the animal is supposed to be sleeping. And in addition, we got a chart that shows the different categories, how many times did we encourage the behavior throughout the category. So then when we go through these charts and every month we generate a form, we can actually see and improve for the next month, how are we encouraging our animals to do a bigger range of behaviors and more behaviors using enrichment.